Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Brandon Ward, back with another episode of Order Within. Doing something a little different today. I've got a few episodes planned out that I had ready that I was planning to record, but we had an election this week in the U.S., so I think it's important to talk about it because it was a contentious election, and this affects all of us here in the U.S., and there's a lot of implications abroad. And I think a lot of us are going to be dealing with this for quite some time. So Trump was victorious for his third attempt at being the president of the United States. And full transparency, this is the third time that I've voted for President Trump. I voted for him in 2016, 2020, and now 2024. So for some of you that listen, if that is a non-starter, I'm sorry to hear that, but I wish you well. I'm hoping, and this is a big point of this episode here, at least part of it, is that we can start working on bridging the gap and division in the country. I do think there's some distinctions that I want to talk about in today's episode. So I'm going to be free-flowing a bit here, just some thoughts that I've been having over the last 24 hours. Been talking with my wife about everything. There are a lot of people that are celebrating, and there are a lot of people that are having a real hard time today. So it's Wednesday, it's the day after. The emotions of all this is very high, and I think some of the things that we need to work on first and foremost are self-reflection. And both parties, both sides, whatever, no matter where you may fall on the political spectrum. I'm actually undeclared, so I consider myself an independent. So the ability to reflect is crucial in an open and honest society, and that's something that we have had a very difficult time with as a people, is the ability to reflect on where we are, the mistakes that we've made, and how we can get better and the things that we need to learn. One of the things that I've found to be very empowering about being a Christian and really dedicating my life to Christ and His leadership and how to be a morally sound human being is that we're all flawed. We all come from a place of being flawed, and that knowing that is a humbling position, and that it's our role and duty as God calls us to live a different life, to live a higher standard of life, to live a moral life. That is our call as our Creator has commanded of us, and it's our duty to live true to that. That can be challenging, especially in the world that we live in today. This is a fallen world, as I've said many times at this point on the show now. And knowing the division that's been happening in this country, I think if you voted for Trump and you're excited right now and you're feeling primed about it, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm primed and feeling excited and hopeful and optimistic about the future. And there's a lot of vitriol out there. So having some celebratory moments, gloating, taking in the tears as many people are doing, I think that's all well and good. But if we're really going to heal as a nation, we have to rise above a lot of the noise. And we have to lead by example. That means we need to have open hearts and open minds to those in opposing parties or people that we know, friends, family members, people in our community that have been captured by the propaganda, to be frank, and the machine that's been operating. This machine is very powerful. I think that's why this win is so monumental. Is because Trump and his supporters went up against the entire media machine, the political machine, Hollywood, the news media, big money. All of those things were standing against the American people in many ways. And so knowing that, this victory tastes incredible. But how do we handle moving forward? Now, what are we going to do? And I think there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. First and foremost, being compassionate, being understanding, being accepting does not mean that we tolerate any and every type of behavior. Christ was a very compassionate, loving man. He opened his heart to those who had open minds and open hearts about their position, the ones that were humble, the ones that could recognize they made mistakes, but they wanted something more. They were yearning for something more. So he brought a message of hope and optimism that wasn't present in the religious communities at that time. He took the law, which was the Torah and what was prominent at the time, and built upon that with a hope and compassionate, oriented, focused way of living. And his change was that the Heavenly Father is a compassionate, loving Father. Much of the original laws, much of the original documents and the books in the Old Testament are very fear-driven. And that is appropriate at times. I think as humanity, and I can look at this as a father and think about my young child and the way she responds to things. She's a very headstrong, powerful individual, very strong-willed. My wife and I do our best to lean into logic and discourse with her to try and get her to see and make decisions and approach things with a logical, meaningful approach. But it doesn't work all the time. A lot of times her emotions override and she's not listening to reason. So sometimes you have to drop the fear in, and it works. I don't like doing it, but it does. So I think in the same way as where we were in the Old Testament, using fear, using punishment, using strong consequences for our actions was a powerful and meaningful way to keep us in living a rightful life. But as time has gone on, as we have evolved as humans, and as Christ brought a message of hope and inspiration and compassion, we realize that it's not just fear and tyranny that can motivate people, but love and inspiration. And that's what's so beautiful about this, is the Old Testament and the New Testament are bridging those two components. It doesn't mean we disregard fear or consequences. It just doesn't mean it's the only way we operate. So, how does that tie into where we are now? A couple of things. One, there are a lot of people that are doubling down on their positions that have not learned anything in the 10 years, almost 10 years now, that this has been going on. And frankly, I've been quiet and subdued and passive because I wanted to be respectful of other people's positions, even if they were extreme about it and they were in your face about it and they wouldn't do the same thing for you. For me, that was a mistake. Looking back, that was a mistake. Allowing people to be so dominant with their ideas and not offering the same kind of openness that I was. So I think that, as in general, I think that's a trait that a lot of people have, in particular Christians, because we have this notion of being accepting and loving, regardless of what others are doing to us. I don't think that has gotten us where we are now, being too passive and too accepting of nonsense. The Bible tells us what's right and wrong. We have clarity on those things. That's what's been incredible for me going on this journey of reading the Bible. I'm about 25% of the way through, by the way, for my first time reading it all the way through. It's been so cool and helpful and enlightening. I'm in Judges right now. So we have clarity on what's right and wrong from that sense. But that doesn't mean that we just accept any and all behavior. And that's where we have to pivot. For those that are doubling down, that have no ability, or not, they do have the ability, but are choosing to not reflect on their approach and their perspective and their philosophy and the ideas that they have and what they're offering the world, if their approach is still to name call, to call people bigots, racist, misogynist, hateful people, then you've lost the battle and the opportunity to be open in a discussion. You're now declaring to me that you're not honoring, you're seeing me as something lower than, less than, and you are going to bludgeon with these names and these honestly derogatory terms without any kind of factual backing to them. The shift is around ideas. This is a battle of ideas. We have to win with ideas, not force, not authoritarianism, none of those things. Ideas are what will propel us forward. And if you can't win an argument with your ideas, calling people names is not the appropriate means to make progress and to help change someone's mind. And if that's your approach, you don't have any interest in changing someone's mind. You only want them to submit to your authority, which is, this is my way, I'm right, you're wrong, you're hateful, you're a bigot if you view anything else than the way I view the world. That's nonsense. We have to call that out. Like, we can't be passive anymore with that stuff. And frankly, there are people in this election, particularly Christians, that chose to sit out because they didn't get everything they want, or Donald Trump's position on abortion or whatever it wasn't as absolute as they wanted it. So they were willing to surrender all of the other progress that could potentially be made, or a loss to a candidate that, from my perspective, is frankly far more dark and sinister in her ideology and positions. I mean, you just have to look at the way she's operated as a politician over her career and the things that she says. It's not that hard. It's right there. So if you see those things and you still choose to non-participate because you're not getting everything that you want, that's a weak stance. That's a passive stance. That's something, to me, also needs to be called out. So if you're taking this absolute position because of one issue and nothing else is going to matter, and you would be willing to allow someone that has far more dangerous ideas to run our country, and you're going to be principled, quote unquote, I'm sorry. I can't disagree more with that position. It's a position of weakness. And it's also a coward's position because you're seeking comfort. That, to me, that's what it is. You're not you're claiming to stand for something, but you would allow the entire world around you to burn down to prove a point, to be quote unquote right. These are the things that we have to reflect on as a people. We have to be willing to humble ourselves and look at. And if people aren't willing to do that, so that's what I mean. I'm saying this on both sides. For people that are unwilling to reflect, to open their heart, to look at themselves, to look in the mirror, and to realize that we all make mistakes, we all get things wrong, to humble ourselves. The people that refuse to do that do not deserve grace. Grace doesn't work. We've given grace, and that's what's gotten us to where we are. What works with people like this is force and fierce belief and conviction in our ideas. And standing up to that, calling it out, not standing for it. That's the difference. So we're going to have to approach things now, moving forward, from my perspective, with a two-pronged approach. Discernment is going to be critical. For those individuals, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, if they're refusing to reflect and move from their positions, and all they can do is scream in your face or double down on everything that they're saying, they're a lost cause, frankly. And the only thing we can do is pray for them. Pray for their salvation. Pray for a change of heart. Pray to our Creator and to God and to Christ that they will one day know the love and peace and power that we have found in our connection with our Creator. But if they're unwilling to do that, they are not deserving of grace, more grace, because their intention is to destroy the very fabric of this nation and the ideology that built up this country to what it is today. The American values, the American principles are welcome, are welcome if you share those values. That's what makes this country so beautiful. So being family-oriented, being a nation of religious freedom, being a nation of individual prosperity, those are the things that this country stands for. So we can't surrender positions to people out of acceptance or grace who wish to destroy those things. And those that are doubling down and can't learn from what has happened and can't look at the last decade of the approach and the messaging and the ideals and learn anything from it and still turn around and blame the other side for their ignorance, for their intolerance, for their bigotry, they're lost. They're completely consumed by the machine that is. So now is the time to start challenging that, calling that out, not tolerating it. Saying, no, enough is enough. No, you don't get to call me a bigot and have no standing on that because it's blasphemy. These are false accusations, right? And we look at the Old Testament, the false accusations are in there. That it was a crime punishable by death in the Old Testament. Now, do I think people need to be put to death that are falsely accusing people? No, I don't know. Well, actually, it's a topic for a different time. But most situations, no. But if those people are accusing people of crimes falsely, in particular, rape, murder, things like that, then that's a whole different story. It's a different subject for a different time. But false accusations are a crime. That's not appropriate living. That's immoral to falsely accuse things and have no backing of those things. So knowing that, we have moral ground to stand upon, that we can stand strong and fierce in those positions and pushing back on people that view the world like that. That's the first aspect. Those that are refusing to reflect on themselves, those that are refusing to acknowledge their own role in where we are. Because at the end of the day, all of us have gotten us to this point. All of us have some contributing factor to this. No matter what side or whatever position you hold, all of us are creating the earth as it is. We're all here together doing those things. So the first aspect is we are going to challenge and push back on people that refuse to reflect and refuse to take accountability of any kind. The second piece is those that are starting to come around, those that are starting to awaken. And in particular, those that have been standing on the opposite aisle of a lot of our perspectives or values. This is where grace must be applied. If there are people out there, no matter how far left or whatever it is, extreme on either side, those people have been, if they are willing to reflect and observe themselves, their ideas, and are trying to learn how things got to where they are and what they can do better or differently, we need to open our arms and embrace those people with grace. That's where grace should be applied. That is where those things matter, because that's the difference when you think about Christ and the way that he operated is when he interacted with people, even the lowest of the low, right? He would engage with those that were open to the ideas that he was offering, open to the idea of a loving father. They were desperate for something that offered them more. They felt cast out by society. They knew that they were sinful. They admitted to their folly, their sinfulness, and they repented in that sense. So those that are willing to reflect, that can recognize their shortcomings, those are the people that we need to offer that grace to, that love to, that compassion to, because those are the people that can have a changing heart. And I can tell you this, people that go far into the darkness and are consumed by it. Look, I've been there myself. I've been consumed by materialistic ideologies. I've been consumed by the desires of the flesh. I've been consumed by materialism. So we need to always remember that none of us are perfect. That's the whole notion of this. None of us are perfect. And so when people are willing to be humble and learn about the world around them, learn about their own perspectives, their own values, it's our duty to offer them an open heart and an open mind if they're coming at it with good faith. It doesn't help anyone if we refuse to accept and forgive people like that. We're never going to bridge the gap and build a better world if we can't do that. That's why discernment is key. I'm not saying it needs to be a blanket thing. That's why I led with the first part, because people struggle with that. There's a lot of people that are already struggling with the notion of offering any kind of grace to anyone. That's why we have to discern when we apply that grace. And because God uses imperfect people all the time. That's the beautiful thing about it. When you read the Bible, you realize that God uses the imperfect all the time. So there are people in the world today that have the opportunity to open their hearts and to potentially bring a whole new life and energy to their existence that could funnel them and bring them to the light of Christ and the compassion that our Creator offers. So it's our duty as Christians to offer an open hand and help them on that journey. So being patient and open and understanding is the challenge that we have ahead of us. And that's why bringing factual pieces of information, having strong, sound arguments, knowing that this is a battle of ideas and that it is the battlefield of ideas that will win out ultimately. So we must come to the battleground, so to speak, with those ideas. So how do we arm ourselves with those ideas? Well, one, we can get schooled on the Bible, read scripture, learn. pray. We can spend time in our community. We can discuss ideas with open-minded individuals. We can enrich and steel man our arguments, our positions, by really thinking thoroughly through, trying to understand the opposition, where people are coming from, do our best to truly reflect on the values that matters to our opposition and why they believe the things that they do, and how can we bring and bridge those gaps in a way that makes sense from a biblical Christian perspective. Because we're in this world to bring those with open hearts to our Creator. We're in this world to serve God. Christians are in this world as disciples. Christ calls us to disciple. That's why we're here. I'm so sad that I didn't answer this call so much earlier in my life. But knowing now what I know, this is the opportunity in front of us. So there's a lot of people that are struggling right now. A lot of people are going to be having a hard time. It's going to be challenging for a lot of people. And I think the next few years, I honestly think that this is going to go far beyond this term. And the decade ahead of us is going to be one wrought with change and transition. And knowing that means we have work ahead of us. We have opportunities ahead of us. And we have to be strong in our faith, strong in our beliefs, convicted in those things. And we have to call upon us the courage so that we can go out in the world and call upon the Father to lead us so that we may fulfill His will. We are the instruments with which God flows through. We become the vessels when we open our hearts and minds to our Creator. It is a choice. None of this is thrust upon us. We choose. God uses those individuals who open their hearts to Him. That's what makes it beautiful. That's also why we're not forced to do this. We always have a choice. So knowing that, it is our duty to become those vessels and move through the world so that the Holy Spirit can flow through us and into this nation, into this world, and that we can bring about lasting change. I truly believe a golden age is upon us, but it will not come without defeating the darkness and evil that exists in our world. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but there is so much to be excited about. And so understanding, I think, these two fundamental pieces of where we are now and how we move forward is one, no grace for those that are arrogant and non-reflecting on the errors or their positions and only refuse and continue to double down and call other people names, to be hateful, to be angry, to be completely closed off to anything new. We can't offer grace to that. Christ didn't offer grace to that. Look at my beautiful wife right there. Wow, you look amazing.
We're taking photos, family photos. Not usually.
Yeah.
I kind of want to say, you can take it out if you want. So I know this is a political one since we just had a election, and I also voted for Trump. This is my second time voting for Trump, so this is kind of like your average Trump supporter. I implore people who are terrified right now of a Trump presidency to get off mainstream media and the corporate suits that are telling you that we're neo-Nazis who want to hurt you and that we hate you and we're trying to overpower you and do all of that. We want what's best for everyone. And most people who are voting for Trump genuinely want what's best for everyone. They're not just like, I'm self-serving asshole voters. Sorry, I didn't mean to curse, but we really do just want what's best for everyone, and that's what we feel is best for not only America, but the world as a whole. And we weren't motivated by fear by you. We voted for Trump. We weren't afraid of you or, any of Kamala Harris or Democratic voters. I used to be a Democrat. So don't be afraid. Something that I think some people on the left-leaning spectrum don't have a ton of faith because they just can kind of get wrapped up in the material everything. Have some faith in people that we're not evil, we're not out to get you, we're not these boogeymen. We just want to coexist, just like you. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents. Have a great day.
Well, for you out there, that's my wife, Ashley. First time she's made an appearance on the podcast. I love that. This is definitely a freewheeling episode here. So, but she's right. I mean, that's ultimately what it's about. It's not about fear. It's not about living in a fear state, being afraid of the world, being afraid of other people. I think that's the biggest change that has to happen is we have to start leading with courage and compassion and strength and not operating out of fear. And I think there's a lot of people that have been fear-mongered into a very dark place. And that's really what a lot of this episode is about too, is trying to reach those that are stuck in darkness, that are challenged by the things that they've been told. And because truthfully, it's an abusive relationship that we've been in with the ruling class, the media. We've been gaslit, lied to, manipulated. And so it's an abusive relationship. And when you're coming out of an abusive relationship, it's hard. It's sad. There's anger, there's fear, there's frustration, there's all of these things. So, but there is light in the world. There is goodness in the world. Not everyone, just as Ashley was saying, we're not evil, man. We're not Nazis. I don't wish ill on people. I really don't. The difference is, though, is if you're wishing ill on others, though, that's where changes. But we don't want dark things to happen in the world. And ultimately, that's what this is about, is bringing light and compassion into the world, bringing transparency and truth. That's what this is about. So knowing that as Christians or non-Christians, we need to lead with optimism, with hope, with strength, with compassion. And we need to counter the fear with strength and conviction and not cow to that. The tides are turning. And the opportunity is now here to show a different way of operating, to not be a people based and driven by fear, but to operate from something higher, something more powerful. And that's why the Holy Spirit, the love of Christ, the love of our Creator, is the ultimate path to healing and unifying this nation. It's not through a politician, it's not through a political movement, it's through our Creator and through Christ. And that is what brings us power and strength and connection and unity. So, I hope this helps. I know it's a lot for a lot of people right now, and things are going to be really interesting. I'm not going to do a ton of these political podcasts. I used to have a political podcast. It's not, I'm in this world to serve God. God is the thing that I'm most passionate about. So that's why I've pivoted to Christian-focused content here, God-centered content, because it's where my heart lies. And I hope you're enjoying this new shift. So I'm going to be more active on Substack. If you're a part of that community, you can engage with me there. I'm active on X if you want to engage there. Otherwise, if you have any comments or thoughts, questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can find all my episodes on pretty much all the social media, the podcast platforms that are out there. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, hit that like button. Y'all know the deal by this point. That's how we grow, and that's how things work in the world that we live. So anyway, I really appreciate your eyes, your ears, your attention, and I really think things are going to be okay. So I encourage you to pray, to continue to pray, to be strong, to be courageous, and to lean into that faith and offer, let's offer something different to the world, because now is the time. Things are really turning. So with that being said, God bless y'all, and until next time.